Xbox Game Pass for PC is Microsoft's subscription service offering over 100 games to download and keep for as long as you keep your sub going. I'll be honest, it makes me a bit antsy. What happens to that game collection if it ever stops? What happens when games are removed from the library, as they already are on Xbox One? And will they ever sort out the janky Xbox beta app required to use Xbox Game Pass for PC now? It's a great value proposition, especially if you use the £1 starter deal, but I understand if you treat it with suspicion. Helping us get over that hurdle are the riches contained within, albeit dominated by first-party headline acts. Sure, getting cheap access to Sea of Thieves and Gears 5 is swell, but along with those modern boys and some classic boys, there are also all of the fun little indie hidden gem boys. Those are the boys I'll be talking to you about today. 10 of them, in fact, and we'll go through what they are and why, if you get Xbox Game Pass for PC, you should play them. There's a pretty decent selection of metal posters on Displate as well, who we've partnered up with to open up our own store page with little collections of mine, Alice's and Matthew's favourites. If you want to give those a look, then click the link in the description. Now, let's see what fun things are hiding in Game Pass. What if cowboys were made of sticks? According to West of Loathing, they'd be really funny and do weird walks. West of Loathing is a comedy western RPG where you step into the spurred shoes of a person living in the weird Wild West, do silly walks, and engage in rough and tumble turn-based combat encounters. It's got an outstanding sense of humour, like the spittoons, buckets for spitting in that can be found throughout the world. You can search every one and find gross but pretty worthwhile items like a nasty ring, a filthy porcelain cow, or a revolting brooch. Each time, the game gives you a painfully drawn-out monologue describing in explicit detail as you reach into a pot full of human phlegm. Ugh. Ape Out is really special. You're an ape escaping captivity, making your way through various levels that each have an overall persistent layout, but with procedurally generated environments within. You traverse from the left to the right of the map, shoving armed guards into walls and each other to explode them into bloody mush, grabbing them with your big gorilla arms so they panic and fire gunshots into their mates and act as disposable shields, or going all tactical espionage and avoiding them altogether. It's simplistic, slick and satisfying, but it isn't the crown jewel of the game. Ape Out's soundtrack, and its entire presentation, is a collection of vinyl albums of drum freestyle solos, even featuring a flip onto the B-side of the metaphorical vinyl halfway through each album of levels. The tracks themselves are properly freestyle improvised as well. The drummer is procedurally generated, and depending on what happens in-game, the track will change. As the action ramps up and gets faster, so does the music. If an alarm goes off or the power to the facility is cut and the lights go out, then the vibe will shift to reflect the situation. Thousands of samples are used and each album plays around with different drumming styles too. Reactive video game soundtracks have been a thing before, but not quite to this scale. It's so seamless that were you not to know, you wouldn't notice, but once you do know, it's bloody cool. Not only would I recommend Ape Out because it's fun, but also I'd recommend it for this music alone, because as well as being technically brilliant, it's also properly good. There's also properly good music in Clustertruck, but it errs more on the cheesy side of things. That suits the absurd aim of the game though. You're a speedy, jumpy parkour man trying to reach the finishing line at the end of a mission. What are you parkouring over? Trucks. F***ing loads of trucks. Trucks driven by people who probably shouldn't be at the wheel of an on-average £18,000 rectangle of steel and potential death. And yes, I had to Google that. For such a silly concept, Clustertruck is obsessively engaging. I accidentally played it for an hour longer than I'd meant to, because as often as I did shit on it and fall in front of, behind or in between a cacophony of trucks, the times where I didn't felt just that bit more satisfying. The levels get creative too, like this one where you have to make a right angle turn by hopping onto some parallel trucks, and this one where they all go up a big ramp and you need to launch yourself off one at speed to make a big jump. With upgrades as well, like a double jump and a grappling hook, there's actually a lot here beyond the very part and parcel premise, so do give it a go. If I lived in a medieval fantasy world, my dream job would be if I was both a buff orc lady and the owner of a tavern. My second place dream job, however, would be the job of the protagonist in Moonlighter. You run a general store full of exotic items, the twist being that these items are ones you procure while you, as the name of the game suggests, moonlight as a dungeon crawling adventurer. It also looks absolutely gorgeous. There's a classic Legend of Zelda quality about the whole thing, with dungeon rooms filling up the whole screen, sword spinning and all that. Moonlighter is a really fantastic concept, and if you pick up Xbox Game Pass for PC, there'd be no harm in trying it out. Another game with a fantastic concept is Battle Chef Brigade Deluxe. It's like Iron Chef, where you're pitted against an opposing cook to produce a meal and/or meals to impress a panel of judges. The cooking itself consists of a few variations on match 3 puzzles. You have to match flavour crystals to turn them into better crystals, and match those to make bestest crystals, all tailored to specific tastes of certain judges. The twist? To get your ingredients, you have to pop out of the back door of the kitchen into the wilderness, where the game becomes a hack-and-slash platformer where you have to hunt animals and harvest plants in order to obtain your ingredients for cooking with. It feels like the kind of ridiculous conceptualising you'd expect from an anime, and the art style reflects that. I love Battle Chef Brigade to bits. It's really Moorish, and the daily challenge mode lets you dip in and play it for about 10 or so minutes to pass time, while also offering a quaint story mode where you take part in the Battle Chef Brigade and try to win the championship. There's also a gloomy, alcoholic, lesbian elf huntress lady who barely pays attention to you when you have to perform a combat competency test because she's too busy lamenting over whether she's sent too many letters to the girl she fancies. She's a big mood, and I love her. There's a chance you might have heard of a game called Stealth Bastard Tactical Espionage Arsehole. It was a pretty decent stealth platformer that's been described as existing in a space between Metal Gear Solid and Super Meat Boy. It was all made on GameMaker, and the developers Curve Studios even released the project file so you could open it up in GameMaker and see how it all worked. Stealth Inc. 2, a game of clones, is its slightly more dimensioned, slightly shinier, slightly more Metroidvania-ish sequel. The general setup here is that you're a little goggle-wearing clone used by a big tech company to test robots. Normally, clones are cleaned up after use. Cleaned up meaning squished, torn apart by a big spinny wheel with blades on it, or getting turned into red mist by lasers. But you have escaped, which means the depressingly competitive administrator in charge of running some of your tests that day has to work likely unpaid overtime in order to get you back into the testing chamber. The puzzles are pretty decent, and you'll sometimes spawn another clone to help out. There are also these apparently sentient boxes you sometimes use that get excited when you're near them and sad when you leave. It's a bit of an emotional guilt trip, but you should still give it a go. Ruiner is very straight cyberpunk. The main protagonist is a partly robotic man whose brain was hacked and is being remotely controlled in order to kill the owner of a corporation called Heaven, so there are some biblical themes there too. And when that signal is disrupted by an apparently good hacker who refers to you with dog-like pet names and at times literally as a dog, you make your way to a shantytown / market covered in Chinese characters rendered in neon because Asian languages are the set dressing of the dystopian near future. It's a fast-paced, twin-stick combat game with dodging, finishing moves and mini stages where you get ranked on your performance. There's also a big shotgun that sets people on fire, so that's pretty cool. Dystopian in a more unsettling and existential way, all while keeping an eye on you, begins by making you put in your email address and agree to the terms and conditions of a brand new governmental service called Orwell. It's a new citizen justice scheme introduced by the current and long-standing government, the Party. Bombs are going off, and you, a new user for Orwell, are tasked with looking at CCTV footage, scouring social media and the headlines from the national newspaper, and prying on private messages in order to create a network of suspect profiles and figure out who is behind the bombings. It's a really uncomfortable and effective commentary on surveillance and privacy, if the name of the game being Orwell didn't make that clear. You can make choices about what information to add to your profiles and whether your supervisor sees it. These choices can have varying different consequences. I added a comment one person had left on a post as evidence that she and another person were friends, but my supervisor misread it as evidence of torture, for example. There was this bit where I submitted some indicting evidence of a person assaulting a police officer in self-defence. My supervisor immediately sent police officers to arrest her. I was left to snoop on a private chat log between the person and her friend, watching as the friend kept sending messages asking where she was and if she was okay. I felt absolutely awful. If that sounds like an interesting time to you, then definitely play Orwell. Lichtspeer Double Speer Edition is a campy German synthwave spear throwing game where you've been tasked by a giant floating Germanic spacehead that's a god to throw spears made of light at zombies for his own personal amusement. I think it's f***ing outstanding. There isn't really much else to say about it. Honestly, if that little descriptor didn't immediately sell you on it, then I'm not sure what will. Oh, when you throw a spear while it's in the air, you can press A and it will split into 3 separate spears. There you go, play it. In Downwell, you're a little guy with boots that have guns on the bottom of them. You jump down a really deep well, an endless well, and you have to try to not die while trying to make sure an assortment of creatures of varying lethality do die, so that you can collect gems from their corpses to use as currency. Sometimes, if you pick one of 3 randomly selected perks between levels, you can also eat those corpses in order to regain health. As you level up by killing more creatures and delving deeper down the well, you'll unlock different colour palettes for the game, like this really nice green and this equally nice blue. Shocking nobody, I prefer the red. Downwell is a very basic game, but that absolutely acts in its favour, and it still has a lot of depth. It's a cracking amount of fun and can get quite chaotic, especially when you get the perk that makes blocks shoot out bullets when you destroy them. Give it a bash. I'm still not sure how I feel about Xbox Game Pass for PC, but whatever I feel, I know a good game when I see one. These are some of them that might not get as much of a spotlight as others, like The Outer Worlds or Hatterful Boyfriend, presented before you because I think they're fantastic little things that you should try if Xbox Game Pass is the service for you. I also know a good metal poster when I see one, and there are lots of those on Displate who we've partnered up with to make our own little store, which you can check out by clicking the link in the description. Displate makes these really nice metal posters with a magnetic mounting system that means you don't need to drill into your wall and ruin the gamer wallpaper in your gaming room. There are over 500,000 designs, and we've even gone and picked each of our favourites to go into little collections on our page on the store. So if you buy any of those ones, then a bit of money will come back to us, and we can use that money to pay for our company Xbox Game Pass subscription. They also plant a tree for every poster sold, and trees are pretty nice, aren't they? If you found this list helpful and or entertaining, please do give it a like and subscribe to Rock Paper Shotgun for more videos like it. Cheers very much for watching, and hopefully see you again soon.